You are now live on Channel 8 and YouTube.
Thank you very much, Hannah, right?
Yes.
Thank you. I'd like to call the meeting of the Narragansett Regional School Committee for the budget presentation to order. And we will, and the time is 6:08, and sorry about that operator trouble here. Okay, I'm not seeing anything. Let's go to this camera view so I can see you all. Excellent, thank you. Thank you very much. All right, we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you all very much, and I apologize for that. I had all of the dates except this one. We'll move. The meeting is being recorded by the Narragansett Regional School District in conjunction with Templeton Community TV and provided to Templeton and Phillipston cable access. So I thank you. I'd like to move now to the approval of the minutes of January 20th, 2021. I'd like to have a motion to approve those minutes.
So moved. So moved.
Second.
Thank you. So we have the first with Hank and the second with Lori. Do we have any comments on those minutes? Anything for approval? Then we'll motion to approve those minutes. We'll have to do this in roll call. So we have Miss Mattson.
Yes.
Mrs. Robichaud.
Yes.
Mr. Mason.
Aye.
Mr. Marks.
Yes.
And Mrs. Tripolo says yes. So we have those minutes approved. Thank you. We now have the minutes of February 1st, 2021. This is the Narragansett School Committee. It was a budget presentation. I'd like to have a motion to approve those minutes.
So moved.
Second.
In a second. Thank you very much. Was that Lori and Hank?
It was Deb.
No, Deb and Hank. Thank you very much. Hi, do we have any corrections or any comments on those minutes?
No.
Okay, we're not seeing any. We'll take a move, but we have to do this in roll call session. So again, we'll do it. Mrs. Mattson,
Yes.
Mrs. Robichaud,
Yes.
Mr. Mason,
Aye.
Mr. Marks,
Yes.
and Mrs. Tripolo says yes. So we have the approval of those 2 minutes. I'd like to move now to the budget presentation. And I'd like to turn that over to Dr. Casavant and Mrs. Geister, our business manager, please.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. So I think that I know that this committee has heard this once already, and I know that along with our viewership, the other captive audience, I believe, is certainly the select board, many of them. So in this Zoom world, I say hello. I'm not quite sure if you're able to, if I have a little square up there, I'm not sure. I can't see everything, but I know that they're watching the YouTube very closely. So if any questions, I know that Susan will shout out, and I can stop at any point in time. So I'm going to share the screen, and hopefully I can do this right. Okay, I'm going to ask, just so I know, can everybody see what I'm supposed? Okay, good. All right. So what we have obviously is the budget presentation, and it's interesting because it seems like every day that goes by, there's always some type of new information that could somehow affect it one way or another. But we're gonna, this is what we have, and we'll adjust accordingly as we move forward. So as we did last time, I think I tried to joke about, you hate the kind of people who tell you the end of the story or the end of the book prior to getting to it or reading it. But what I think what helped is that really kind of set the expectation or where we're going to be at in the very beginning. So I want to do that. So if I was to summarize the FY22 budget as we look ahead, it's going to take all available funding resources to adequately fund the FY22 budget. And really what we mean by that is that, we're going to have to, at least in Anne Marie's and my opinion, and certainly is our recommendation, to use all of our E&D. And we'll talk a lot about E&D a little bit later on in the presentation. But given the financial situation as it is, we think that is going to be necessary. We've not added additional staff to the general fund, although there will be a considerable increase to class sizes at the elementary level. Again, we'll talk about that as the slide presentation goes on. We did not add any staff, but what this budget presentation really is a harbinger to for the future. And we'll talk about what COVID has done and not done, but maybe has delayed, in a sense, some very high class sizes. But again, we will get that to the presentation. And if we were able to maintain level services because of various COVID grants. So after all that was said and done in terms of what we were able to offset and cut or whatever the case is, we were still had a shortfall of $188,345, which will be covered by the CARE 2 funds, which we will realize July 1. When they give you an option, either you could almost take the money immediately, or you could take it in July 1. And of course, we want to utilize that to help us with FY22. So as with every budget presentation, we talk about direct needs. What do we need? At the high school science teacher, we need a physics teacher. Now, that's to expand our Project Lead the Way program, which we have been recognized for as being one of only 11 districts in the entire state that has a K through 12 Project Lead the Way program. But we know that we needed to do it at no additional cost to the district. We needed to ensure that all academic and special needs services remain intact. We're going to talk quite a bit about special education, but certainly what we've been working on is to improve our academic offerings, as well as meeting the needs of all students. Our HVAC upgrades needed to be really to advance to a more technologically monitoring system. We've updated our HVAC here at the middle and high school, the regional, to quite an extent this year, to meet the needs of course, COVID, to ensure the safety of our students and staff. But we're going to need to move more to a more technological monitoring system, meaning that actuators, et cetera, will need to be modernized. A class size reduction at the elementary school, that is a need, and that's going to be a topic of conversation, I think, over the next couple of years. We need to address learning gaps and social emotional needs related to COVID, and we've had several presentations. Miss Ashley Niggle did a great job I think it was last month, in regards to social emotional survey and what we're doing in order to meet those needs. So how did we meet this needs? You don't want to just bring a bunch of problems without some solutions or some answers. So when we start talking about the high school science teacher, the physics piece, is that we fill the interim high school music position. So what we did is Jody Clapp moved on at the beginning of last school year. Jody Clapp, and I can use his name because he was very well known, but he really filled 3 buckets. He was certainly the music teacher. He taught a math class, but he also taught some very highly attended science classes. So when he moved on, we really kind of lost 3 teachers in one, so to speak. And so when we filled his position, when he moved on with an interim, we knew that we were going to have to make some changes, and we did so because the middle school has 2 music teachers. So we moved up 1 music teacher to the high school to make sure that we will have a a vibrant music program and utilize the funds of the interim position to hire a high school science teacher. When you look at the staffing of the high school and how it's configured, the science department, for whatever reason, and mostly because I think that Mr. Clapp could fill several different roles, was actually almost 2 staff members short of what the English and the math and the history department was. So it was vitally important that we do that. We need to reorganize special education delivery, and that's been an ongoing project. So how do you ensure that academic and special needs services remain intact? Well, you look at where you need services and you basically move people. So how we've done that is where we are maybe heavy in one area or light in another. We've repositioned staff, and we've also done a lot of work with when certain staff positions have left the district for one reason or another. We have been sure to hire school psychologists, etc. The HVAC upgrade, we explored opportunities with both towns. We need to explore both opportunities with both towns through the Green Communities program, as well as anticipated grant opportunities through the federal government. So we have done a lot of work looking into, just on our own, about where some of these costs could be realized through maybe the Green Communities programs, but we don't know what the next tranche of monies that will come out of the federal government, or if there will be. But we are told that that some of that monies may be used to address districts or buildings that have HVAC concerns. We are very fortunate in this district that mechanically we are very sound, and we've done a lot of work in that area. We just need to update some key areas as we move forward. Class size reduction. We're gonna use the CARE funds to reduce class size to address learning gaps this upcoming FY22 school year. But again, this will be a point of interest / concern as we move forward throughout the years. And the learning gaps, we've all heard to expand our summer school program. We know that there's funding out there. This will look very different than the summer programs that we have offered in the past, mostly for students with special needs who might have in their IEP an extended year program. But this is really focused on students who, because of COVID, might have delays or gaps in learning. So we came with needs, but we have tried to address those with hopefully to folks' approval as we move through the presentation. So we always talk about enrollment, and what I thought was interesting that we knew right off the bat that we were quote unquote missing a lot of children when we came back to school, and usually our October 1 number is usually the number that drives, of course, funding. And by missing, they were here and they just unenrolled, and many students in that category either were homeschooled or were taken into homeschool by their parents, or they were children who were residents at one point and they moved and they attempted to school choice here, but again, we don't do that, and so they've gone to other districts. But when you look at October 1 of 20, you look at that there was the big takeaway is that elementary pre-K through 4 had 569 students assigned, and then February when we redid the numbers and we looked at our enrollment, it climbed to 586. So we even through now these are not children whom were here, went to homeschool and came back. That's not how we looked at these numbers. These are children who moved into the district. They are new to our district entirely. So as the year goes on, we're seeing what I would call natural increase to our student population. And on the other side of this, and we're going to talk about this right now, when we start looking at what the potential is, we start having to look at what the homeschool factor is. So what I did is we looked at FY20 pre-COVID, and these numbers represent, in general, what typical homeschool numbers look per grade. So if you looked at kindergarten, you see 2, and so in K through 5, give or take 3 or 4 either way, it was about an average about 24 kids at the elementary level whom were homeschooled on an annual basis. In FY21, we saw a sharp increase, an increase of 38 kids, obviously, across the board, whom homeschooled in September, October, November, mostly in September or at the very end of August, and really identified COVID as being the reason why parents who were making decision to homeschool their children, but also made sure, and we received a lot of phone calls and emails regarding if they wanted to come back. They planned to come back once they felt, obviously as a family, that it was safe enough to do so. And as we start to, hopefully start to see the turn of a corner with vaccines and the numbers dropping, we fully anticipate that many of those students will come back. So again, if you look at the color-coded step system that we've kind of created here, in FY20, again, we had 2. In FY21, when they became first graders, there's 12, and so that's plus 10 kids that we wouldn't normally see be homeschooled. Grade 3, you can just go right down the list. And so when you start looking at these numbers and you go to the projected classroom sizes, and again, remember that last budget season, when we were creating the budget, we closed Phillipston Memorial and moved the students to Templeton Elementary, but we also cut 6 teaching positions. In essence, 1 at every grade level, K through 4. And there was a special area teacher as well. So in the district, we went from 5 to 4. And again, that was widely chronicled through many, many meetings and discussions, but it needed to be done in order to meet the budget constraints of the district. So when you start looking at that, if you look at current enrollment of 98 students, say in grade 1, you look at the average class size is 24. If you add back the 5, which is the differential that we, that have homeschooled because of COVID, you see these jumps. And so again, when we look at these numbers, it is easy to see, and this is not, and by the way, this is not including any type of projected move-ins that may happen over the summer, move-outs. There's always an ebb and flow, but the fact is that you start seeing class sizes of 30, 28. Well, and again, we went out, a couple, digits here, but I mean, you're looking at 28, 29, and 30 class sizes, and that can start become obviously concerning. And we, again, very widely chronicled and discussed through the budget process of the last couple of years. So another factor, and I'm going to stop after school choice to see if there are any questions, right? But we talk about school choice a lot. We utilize school choice differential or monies to offset a lot of costs. Specifically, our health insurance costs come out of school choice, or the district portion of the health insurance. And I believe I should always write this down, Anne Marie, but is it 5 teachers? I'm sorry, how many total staff at this point, Anne Marie?
We have, for next year, we have 9 intended
9.
staff. We've
All
had
the time.
our unified arts at the elementary level have
Okay.
been in there for years.
Right.
So the additional ones have been 5 the past few years.
That's it. Okay, thank you. So, and that has been, again, we've discussed that at length and at times ad nauseum. But when you look at our trend report, you see that, last year we had 249 incoming or receiving school choice students. And we dropped, to 192 in 1 year. Now, interestingly, we knew this was going, we didn't know what the exact number would be, but we certainly knew that there was going to be a steep decline because, again, even during the COVID times, even though when we were all remote during March, April, May, June, and folks were moving, they would call and ask, can we school choice in place? Basically, I'm going to move. Can I just keep my children here in school choice? And of course, the answer to that, as we discussed, was no. And we also, in past years, we would at least try to cover the amount of students who graduated with school choice and kids whom went to Monty Tech, for example, who were school choiced into the district up into the 8th grade. And we've, again, talked quite a bit about that. So we would try to at least keep a balance. But we didn't do that last year. As a matter of fact, overall, we only took in 6 school choice students from kindergarten to 1st grade. And that was really just to honor what I would say is, kind of an unwritten rule is that when they were here, and by the way, they all had siblings, which is part of that. And so we did take in 6, but that was it for the district. Interestingly, we had one of our lowest years of sending. And I think that this speaks maybe to COVID. Things, again, there wasn't a lot of moving of anything for that matter during that point, but we had very few kids who were school choicing out. So that differential, although low, 83, which is probably one of the lower differentials we've seen since about 2015. What I guess saved the day, quite frankly, was that we had quite a decrease in the sending. So when we start looking at, what does that mean in terms of funding, and I'll stop after this, is that, we received, $1.1 million in, or preliminarily in receiving tuition. We will preliminarily lose 618, and so our differential is 503,000. That's the lowest that since I've been here. And again, the reason why that's important is because we offset a lot of costs. In for whatever reason, years back, these costs were put into school choice, and I'm going to go. When I'm talking about specifically are the staff members, but also the insurance. That is those are the things that we are concerned about, quite frankly, because those are things that have to happen, right? We have to have insurance, the district portion. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, I guess, just pause. I know Susan has the eye on, I don't, so I don't know what the questions are. But does the committee or anyone out there on YouTube have any questions thus far? No. Okay.
There's nothing on the YouTube, just FYI.
Okay. We can always get back to it too if there is. So school choice revolving, these are the what we're spending the money on. The 9 teaching positions, as Anne Marie had stated, are PD, sick time buyback. We look at the health insurance is, the next largest cost next to teaching positions. So, every dime that we do spend out of that goes right back to, of course, at least improvement or to the district or educating students. So what is this? Well, it's important to forecast this. So if, just really to sum this all up, if utilizing the same trend that we have experienced over the last, say, couple of years, and if we lose 30 school choice students each year and don't replace them, and if, health insurance, let's see, if we move it, was it 50,000, right? That if we don't start managing this and start talking about how either take the costs out of school choice or start looking at ways to increase school choice without, jeopardizing, class sizes at the elementary would be a non-starter, but within 3 years we'll be upside down. By FY25, given this, the same, monies in and out, and the expenses, we will be upside down in school choice. And the problem with that is you can't go into the next FY without your budget being balanced, right? So that $136,000, of course, we would have to find that, so to speak. And so again, these are things that we always worry about, but we're really going to have to create, I believe, at least from my perspective, create a policy or just a direction when it comes to school choice. Either we're going to need to actively and aggressively back out expenses out of school choice. And by the expenses, I'm talking both the staff, if nothing else, the staff and the insurance. I believe that's $1 million if give or take, and of course over time, and we're going to have to move that to the general fund, or we're going to have to, create opportunities where we're at least balancing our, our school choice out to kids that we're going to accept in. So it's always something, right? But that is something that we're definitely going to have to put to the forefront and keep an eye on. I'm going to let Anne Marie take it from here and give myself a break and give a break of everyone of me.
So our proposed general fund budget for expenses is 2.61% increase. And really, the big drivers in that, as you can see, there's 7% increase in other school services. Well, that's transportation, and it's actually special ed the other big driving thing is in the 5,000s, the fixed cost. That's a lot of our insurances, and it's mainly the retiree insurance. We had a 28% increase in our Worcester Regional retirees assessment for next year. And we had a I don't remember exactly, it was almost 15% increase in our assessment for the Mass Teachers Retirement Assessment. So those are pretty large numbers. Other than that, things were pretty steady. You'll notice like there's only a 1.25% increase in instructional, and that area is what covers all of our staff raises, our supplies, everything to do with educating the student right in the classroom. I don't know if we can go to the next slide and talk about some of those increases.
Okay. So the one thing I want to say right off the top is that, when we start talking about any specific population of student, we certainly, there are no blame here, right? Because it's not about special education students increasing our, our budget. It's about the schools and the transportation who are, well, from my perspective, have very little oversight and in terms of what they can increase, either in their tuition or for the busing. So this is not a problem new to Narragansett, or not new to Narragansett, but it certainly is not unique either. My fellow superintendents in districts are having a lot of trouble and have seen huge increases, especially in transportation. So when you look at the total number of students on IEPs from March 2020 to present, obviously you do see an increase there, and it's certainly well within the realm of what would be a typical an increase. Again, that is not the primary issue. Again, it isn't about the number of kids that you have on IEPs. It's about how many students are being transported and how many children are being, who are outplaced, and what are the costs of those programs. So when you start looking at the increase in special education transportation, that's a 20% increase year over year. And out of district placements, 30%. And so when you start thinking about that, there are programs, by the way, these are not anomalies. These are, I want to say typical, is that we do have children, students from this district who are going to placements that cost $250,000, $250,000+. And that is not something where you go, well, that's just kind of a one-off situation. That is not a one-off situation. I hate to say it, but that's about the going rate. And so when you start seeing these increases, special education costs overall increased 6%, 6.6 over last year. Well, special education almost makes almost a quarter of our budget. So when you see a quarter of your budget go up 6%, it's not a surprise, right? That we start seeing, such huge increases to the fund. And I want to go back to the part is that we have created and have done, Matt Holloway and Dr. Salvatos before him and prior, we have created programs here in the district because we want to keep our students in district. And no, it's not just to save money or to save money. These are our kids. They live in Templeton and Phillipston, and we want them to be a part of whatever graduating class they may be in. We want them to be part of that. And that's important. So what we've been trying to do is create programs. Now that's not always possible. We have every district has kids with varying needs. And so, education, and working on the things that they need to work on, right, is the most important thing. So those are the things that as we move forward, we almost, we just heard about the increase of retirements and health benefits, et cetera. These are things that are truly out of our, out of our control for the most part. But we're working hard to do what we can to minimize the increases, because ultimately, when 20% is the increase of transportation year over year, that is gigantic. And for a district our size can really start affecting the way that the services that we're offering and how we do that. So we start talking about fixed costs, and Henry was just, going through this, but Worcester Regional Retirement will increase 28%. Employee health around 5%, general property insurance 17.5%. So the fixed costs have increased by 3% over last year. Fixed costs make up 21%, give or take, of the entire general fund budget. And so, again, this is nothing new. I know all towns are dealing with this, all districts are dealing with this, and but it can get to a point where it really starts affecting how effective we are educating our students. So when we start looking at, we talked about what costs were, we talked about, what the expenses were, close to 2.61%. What you're hopeful is that, you're generating revenue that's going to at least balance that, or at least balance to that. And that has not been seen for a while. And certainly this year is one of those years. We only saw, an anticipated revenue increase of 1.6%. Again, one of the bigger hits was, of course, transportation. We did not transport as many students, and the reimbursement certainly will reflect that. But the fact is that those are that is what we're talking about in terms of revenue. E&D, why Henry and I were talking about every dime is going to be pushed into that, just to balance. We believe that, but we certainly saw a decrease in that. So again, we knew that the revenue was certainly going to be low. I don't know if we thought it was going to be this low, but which obviously starts to create a gap. And to that, so we start looking at FY22 grant funds. So as everyone I'm sure knows, and if you don't, the governor, stated that the minimum contributions for the towns would be picked up by the FY22 grants that were that were allotted to the districts. So, Henry, do you want to talk about that just a little bit on that part?
Yeah, so the district was awarded $551,234 in the CARES 2 funding. We had the option to apply for that now through July 1, or we can apply July 1 for next fiscal year. So we opted for next year so we could use it to help offset our budget. But what that does is up to 75% of the 551,000 is supposed to be used to cover the town's increase in minimum contribution. So the increase for Phillipston was $50,429, and the increase for Templeton was $139,403. Those two numbers come in less than the 75% that is allotted to cover those. So that actually gives the district more on our side to do some of the things we talked about before, like lowering class sizes and covering the shortfall from the general fund. So that once we cover basically it's a minimum local contribution subsidy for the towns, the district is left with $361,402 to use to get our kids back in school, basically.
And I think here would be a good time to talk about what that really means and how quickly things have changed. And I don't want to go too far into what the governor and the commissioner talked about a couple of days ago with all kids coming back, or the idea is coming back full time for the elementary level. You know, there's certainly more to come on that in the weeks to come. Actually, next week from the district. But if to put it in perspective, before COVID, our budget for FY21 was created, voted, and signed, sealed, and delivered prior to COVID. So that's how quickly, we were able to move last year. That's great. So when those positions were cut, we knew what the class sizes were going to be, again, pre-COVID, right? 4 teachers at the elementary, and they were going to be high. Well, then COVID did happen. March 13th, we were only supposed to be out for a couple of weeks, and it turned in for the rest of the school year, and ESSER 1 came, ESSER 2. So we were able to utilize those monies to keep a few of those teachers. Again, they're not, when I say district employees, they're not being paid out of the general fund. They're being paid from those grant funds. We were able to do a lot with, of course, full remote, and because remember, kids are at 3 feet. Okay, so it's not like you can't have a class of 28 unless you're sitting in the gym. I think, quite frankly, by 3 feet, never mind 6 feet, might be a football field if it's at 6 feet at 28 kids. But we needed those teachers in order to spread out kids, if nothing else, and to do remote. Well, that may have to play out next year. We don't know, and so we're planning to keep those 3 teachers in order to help reduce the class size, but also because we don't know if we're going to be at 3, 6, or whatever footage, folks deem necessary. So when we start talking about ESSER 2 monies and ESSER 1 monies and what we've been able to do with that, if without those monies, we wouldn't be in school. By the way, I talk about the elementary because it's more prevalent down there, but we would not be able to open school at the middle or high school as well. Because those funds were able to provide positions where we need them to be able to open school. So that's how important those monies are. Unless people, no one wants to be full remote ever. But that would be the only option if we weren't able to utilize those funds. So that was just a little, commentary. We're going to be talking about that a lot more here very, very, very soon. So one of the things that I needed to do was kind of go back in time, and I really needed to, Anne-Marie did a great job by looking back several, at least almost a decade, I think, and talk about what did this district generally do with E&D funds when they were available? Because I didn't really have a historical perspective, again, coming in FY16. So we, when we look back, and we made this chart because we wanted to make sure that people understood that if in FY10, as an example, because it's at the top, that the amount certified was $95,000. It wasn't like that came, available like that very next year, like July 1. It isn't realized, or it doesn't really help or be able to be used to fund anything until really 2 years. And so we kind of created this chart to kind of show when those monies were actually, realized or be able to be used. But all in all, over the years, we see that we've used quite a bit of our, if not all, of the excess and deficiency. So it hasn't been since we really started to pay a lot of attention to Medicaid, where unexpended monies were being dumped into E&D if we couldn't expend them by the time that we were notified of them. And so we were able to keep some back. But I think moving forward, Medicaid has definitely fallen off because we haven't been able to provide services to build Medicaid. That just to get us through the year, that I think that it's going to have to, I would think that it had to be one of the years that we'll have to use what monies are available just to balance. So let's see, sorry, operating budget. Again, after all that was said and done, after all the work that we did on the general side of the budget, we still came up $188,000 short. And remember, again, at the very beginning of the slide presentation, I told the ending of the story before we even got there. And, after everything that we've done, we were still $188,000. If this was a typical year, we would have to find this somehow. And we obviously have cut quite a few staff members and done a lot of different things. I'm not sure where that money would have come from, quite frankly. But we're going to utilize the ESSER2 grant that will come available to us July 1 to cover that. And so that ultimately is the, So, again, we're at the end of the story. You really knew how we were going to end it anyway, but given using almost every dime that we've ever been given or ever will be given, it's gone into either, again, covering the shortfall, which is really staff, in services, and utilizing what's left of the ESSER2 grant to make sure that whatever the state configuration is, or whatever they decide, again, maybe you can tell by my tone, frustration, whatever they decide that we need to do in order to get children into this district, those are the funds that are going to make that actually happen. And those funds are very, very vital moving forward to FY22, and actually coming up here, we think in April, to move the elementary kids full time. So with that, this will be the second time for this committee to hear this. Are there any questions? Great. I love that. Silence is deafening. I love it.
I actually have something to ask you, and maybe it's late in coming. This is Lori, if you can't see me. So we talk about, we kind of complain about Monty Tech taking our kids each year, and we try to keep, we try to think of ways to keep the kids, the students here with us. And I've heard, and I don't know if we're a part of it or not, but there are area towns that are a part of a committee that was looking into the way that Monty Tech chooses the students, and the budget and what they charge, and that was like an investigation, and I don't know if that's still going on or not, but is there a complaint or a collective grievance that we could open against the special needs facilities, seeing that their increases are going up so much per year?
I think that's a good question. I don't know that, again, we all lament about the increases that we do, and generally how we are notified about increases. We receive a letter that, you know, whatever, you know, residential or whatever program has gone by up by X. But I would say to you that, so although it's frustrating, right, because it just seems to kind of come out of nowhere. And I think what's more, I think what's frustrating the most is we can never, when we forecast things like we did with school choice, and we're saying to you, look, if everything stays the same, we're going to run out of, you know, we're going to be upside down, you know, in 3 years. What is interesting about special education and frustrating all at the same time is that I can tell you directly that two of the kids that are outplaced that live in this district, okay, so they are residents. So we're not paying for kids who are not our residents. So to be clear, those are move-ins that came very late in the year. Okay, so there's just no way to anticipate, you know, for example, I'll use the worst case scenario, but $250,000 bill, just out of no, you just don't know how to budget for that. Now, we'll be talking like later on about setting up a, what we'd like to do is a special education, I have trust stuck in my head, Emery, I'm sorry. Oh boy.
Stabilization fund.
Stabilization, yes, I have the wrong account, but in my head, but stabilization to offset costs. But it, you know, it's really about, you know, you don't want to get in the position, Lori, the way I like to think about this, I don't want to park money. So in other words, you know, it's say, okay, Templeton and Phillipston, here's our budget, but look, you know, I don't know if this is going to happen or not, but I'd like to put $150,000. You know, I just want to keep $150,000 in my budget just in case. And if we don't use it, well, that's okay, because it'll just roll into E&D. I don't know how well that would, of course, you know, be received. I guess I do. I know that it would not be well received, because there are years that we don't have anyone that there's a surprise in terms of special, you know, outplacement. So that is what, you know, that is the part of it that is yes, the costs are astronomical. We are not able to forecast for it unless we are going to park money, unless we're just going to keep money that we may or may not, meaning in our actual general fund budget, that we'll be able to keep there, and, you know, and then roll over into E&D. I don't think that any community would, you know, that just isn't feasible. So yes, there is a lot of talk about looking at how the percentage increase of outplacements and what they should be allowed to increase by. And there's a way that you can petition that. But I will tell you that these placements are facilitating students with excessive and, you know, needs, mostly medical, quite frankly. And so when as frustrated as I get, I will say to you that they are able to, they do a wonderful job, and then they're able to do something that we cannot in this district. And so there's a cost for that. And those costs keep rising. So this, again, if this was a commercial, I'd say, hey, this is why Chapter 70 funding needs to change. This is why when they allot X amount of dollars for every school district, that special education piece hasn't gone up very much over the last, say, 10 or 15 or 20 years. They need to recalculate that. Now, they talked about that a lot last year, and we know all about it, but that truly is how we can offset it. So instead of getting, you know, I guess, mad at those at the folks who are doing excellent jobs out there in terms of these special needs schools, it's really the state funding formula that we should be railing against, because that's where the issue is. Because it's completely, it is archaic, the amounts that that we're being funded for. So those are the folks that we have to we have to petition against, quite frankly. Which I don't know if we'd probably get on a watch list now that I said that, but I think that that's who we need to push it back against.
Okay, Lori, you're all set.
I am, thank you.
Okay, good. Do we have any other, thank you, Dr. Casavant and Business Manager Anne Marie. Do we have any other school committee comments on the budget? Let's go first. Any school committee comments in general? Okay, then we're going to announce an up and coming meeting, which will be Wednesday, March 3rd at 6 p.m. via Zoom. And that again, the agenda will be the budget presentation for FY22.
Would that be the hearing, Striflo, or is that that's the hearing, correct? I just want to make sure I'm correct.
Yes, that is the budget hearing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Budget hearing, thank you. All right, so if not, then we can take a motion to adjourn. Excuse me, Susan, there is no public comments.
There are no public comments.
Thank you. Take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second,
Okay, we'll do a roll call. Let's start with Mrs. Mattson,
yes.
Mr. Mason,
Aye.
Mrs. Robichaud,
Yes.
Mr. Marks,
Yes.
and Mrs. Tripolo says yes. So I thank you all very much. And thank you for